let me just check. Okay, sounds good. So one of the changes that you will notice is that I probably, and we will get started. Hello and welcome everybody. I think I've just gone live. Just a moment. I need to sort out some things because, as always, I'm doing it with new software from a slightly different location. I also have to do a sound check. So just bear with me for a few minutes and we will get started shortly. At first, let me just check. Okay, sounds good. So one of the changes that you will notice is that I probably sound a bit tinny. That's because I had to use a different webcam just because the other one broke. So there we are. I hope it's still okay because today is kind of an important broadcast. I've got a lot to tell you and I will try to get everything sorted. It's still a bit new using Zoom, so I had to remind myself how to do everything because, you know, as you know, YouTube shut down their most useful feature, which was the really easy broadcasting, you know, live broadcasting. But there we go. Now, today's topic is called Turning the Machine, okay? And that's because we already had the episode of saddling up and riding into battle, okay? But the battle is with huge, complex human systems. So what we need to do now is to turn the machine, okay? The big machine. If we get it right, there should not be any physical battles, okay? If we get to any physical violence, that is also possible in this system because the other side is geared up with all the weapons and absolutely everything. But should it get to any real violence from where we are actively involved, then we have really screwed up. So I am all about using the systems analysis complex system approach to, you know, turning the machine. And this is what I'm working on, okay? Now, so this is the big topic today, and I want you all to change your mindset because typically most people think about how our systems really operate in our society pretty much like the rat in a maze, okay? So you get born, you go to school, and then everything that happens to you, school and your A-levels or your school leaving certificate, your high school prom and your university, if you go to university, or your first job, it all just happens to you and you're mapping the system and life as you're going through it, okay? Now, there are people on this planet when you were born who already have mapped the system because they were in their 60s or 50s or 70s or 80s when you were born, okay? They have done it and they have done that round through life with all their friends. And maybe they run a big company, so they've done it many, many times over if they are providing a service for one part of life and so on, you know. And these people have a completely different view on these systems than you have. They do not have the rat in a maze sort of approach. They are above the maze and they're looking back down, maybe reflecting back on their life, or if they're running a big company, looking down on how that system is done or is run day to day. So a school director has a different view on your school than you as a primary school student, okay? You're doing it the first time, you don't know what the hell this is all on about, you know, and you don't really know what you're expected to learn, how it really functions and all that. But once you've done it once, you understand, okay? So the people who have done it before you are at a huge advantage, and they always will be. And there's nothing you can do about it because you just weren't born when they were born. So what we are dealing with also, especially if you're a member of the young generation, but I'll extrapolate it, okay, soon, but I will start with the young generation. It's easier to understand, okay? So if you're, say, 18 or you're 16 or 12, right, then it's physically impossible for you to have a top-down view on the world like, for example, the head of the Bank of England might, okay? Or maybe, I don't know, the chief of a company. It is physically impossible. Your life was just too short to accumulate the data. Okay. Now, this is the fundamental limitation, and you have to understand this, because once you've understood that this is a limitation, and this is your limitation and my limitation, we can start thinking about tools to work around it. In a sense, how do you catch up with somebody who has been in a certain job or in a certain complex human system for decades longer than you? Okay? How can you, well, maybe not see eye to eye with them, but instead of being like down here, be more like down here, or, you know, up there? So this is the question. Now, the way to really catch up is to stop having this rat in a maze sort of approach, and you need to step out and step up, okay? And you need to look top down on whatever system you're dealing with. And this system could be school, or it could be university, or it could be a traffic situation, or it could be a hospital or a country, right? Or it could be NATO or the UN. It doesn't matter. You have to look top down to really map the system. Okay, so that is trick number one. You don't go through the maze anymore. And this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, also applies to the targeting program. When you are in the targeting program, people make a special effort to keep you boxed in and keep you in the rat in a maze sort of thing, because that is where they get their sense of power from. And as most people in the targeting program know, the targeting program, down certainly on the ground level, is run by absolute fucking morons. Okay? So those morons need to have some sort of advantage over you to stay ahead of the game. As soon as you become ahead of them, they've lost. Okay? They lost the whole war. All right? So this is it. So you will see that in the targeting program, they will particularly try to push you down and keep you so stressed out that at any moment throughout the day, you're always dealing with the next shot in the face by a directed energy weapon. I'm not sure if you can see my, this eye here is red because I was just recently shot into the eye, okay? Pretty unpleasant. And of course, damages the eye by time. But with time. But the reason they did that is because they were trying to push me down into the rat in a maze sort of thing. And I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I've seen this movie before, okay? I know where it runs. In fact, I know it much better than you. I have, because I've seen it once the entire asset stripping cycle from, not quite from the start, but you know, I've seen the end and where it goes. And since then, I've become a physicist. And after that, I just specifically worked on complex human systems. So it is physically impossible for MI6 or the CIA, no matter how hard they try, to ever get me back into the rat in the maze box, because I have outgrown it. It's like trying to stuff a walrus into a little rat maze. It ain't gonna work, okay? I just have too much knowledge about you guys, because, you know, you have done this to me since I was a child, which was really shit back then, but now it's just worth gold, because I got pretty much the CIA MI6, you know, shit show training from you guys already. So the next time it hit me, I was already ahead of the game. And I was like, okay, I know what this is. I know how this is going. Let's get ahead of the game. Okay, so this is what happened. Now, what I want to show you is exactly all the things that I learned that will empower you to get ahead of the game, okay? And that will empower you to turn the machine, okay? The way you want, not the way they want, okay? So this is really important. But before I get to the really important nuggets, let me just check the sound, okay? Just a moment. Okay, sounds a bit crap, but I think it's still okay. So I'm sorry that the microphone is a bit rubbish today, but there we are. So there's always some downside, isn't there? So, okay, so now step number one is you step out of the rat in a maze and you go up. It's basically, you have to think like, I'm gonna, you know, when you, for example, if you're Target or if you are in any other complex human system, like a bank or a hospital or a school or wherever you are, right? It's some big complex system. Mentally, what you have to do is you will just have to say, everybody freeze, And when everybody's frozen, right, in this time, freeze, you just go through the door, leave the scene, and you go up to the executive level and you sit down behind the CEO and you watch. Okay, so that's what you have to do. You leave the ground level, you go up into the executive suite, you sit down behind the CEO and you watch. Okay, you watch silently, secretly behind his back. Of course, in real life, you can't do that. So what you have to, well, actually, sometimes you can. But what you really have to do is you have to mentally go up there and think, if I were CEO or if a CEO is running this, what would he do next? What would he think about? What would be his considerations as opposed to mine? And most CEOs think about, profit margins, they think about risks and liabilities and things like that. And they think about the next paycheck and their bonus and their mistress and where they're going to get their next cocaine fix from, and maybe the holiday with the wife and the children, sort of stuff. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff you have to start thinking about to map the system. Now, when you're in the targeting program and you want to play this game, you are out somewhere, out and about, and you get the typical car harassment and gang stalking, and maybe they shoot you in the eye with a directed energy weapon like they just did with me. And you're like, okay, this is getting really stupid. Let's just freeze, okay? So you just go get yourself some refreshing drink or an ice cream, and you just stand in the corner of the street and you just think. You watch the scene and you think, if I were running these morons, what would be my objectives? What would I want to do better? What is going well? What is not going well? And you start thinking like the CEO of this operation. Okay, so first of all, this is really empowering because mentally you're already a step ahead and you don't give a damn about these underlings because you're already in the mindset that you are paying them. So is that guy any good? Would you sack him? Is his street theater okay? Is it impressive? Is it not so impressive? And so on. But when you start thinking this, right, I'm not trying to turn you into Dr. Evil here. What I'm trying to make you understand is how Dr. Evil thinks and what will absolutely scare Dr. Evil shitless, okay? So if you're CEO, your biggest concerns are your profit margins and your risks and liabilities. Okay, and you always balance those. How much profit can you make with this amount of risk and, with those liabilities and so on? As long as there's more profit than risks and liabilities, it's all on go. But as soon as risks and liabilities become astronomical, it is actually your fiduciary duty as a CEO of any sort of shit show to pull out. Okay, so when you have understood that, you immediately know what you have to do. So if you're in a street theater or if you're being shot in the head with directed energy weapons like I am nonstop, you have to think, how the hell can I increase the risks and liabilities to this corporate shit show so that the CEO will be forced to pull out, because if he doesn't, his shareholders will descend down on him. Okay, do you understand? Because then you don't descend down on the CEO because you can't. You're like somewhere down here and his minions are kind of stomping on you, but you want the CEO to be brought down. How do you do that? You'll find a method for your individual instance to increase risk and liabilities. When you succeed, you tell everybody about this, and when down there at the street level, all the victims are big, massive risk and liability as opposed to a huge, ludicrous profit margin, that's when the message goes up to the CEO and he's in deep shit. And he has to change his strategy really quickly, because if there's anybody watching the profit margins more closely than the CEO, it's the shareholders. Okay, because they also don't run a company. Their only interest is how much fucking money is coming to them from that direction. So they will be like checking this much more frequently than the CEO possibly can. Okay, so as soon as the risks and liabilities are bigger than the profits, You don't have to do anything. You will be a little ant down there, right? But you have just found a method to increase risks and liabilities. And if enough of you down here replicate it, bigger dogs will descend down on the big dog, right? And then you just get the popcorn and you eat it and you watch as these guys destroy the CEO and try to find a replacement, okay? Now that is the trick. You get to this trick by leaving the scene, stepping out of the rat maze and trying to map the system top down, okay? So this is one of the big secrets of complex human systems, okay? This is how you can beat a complex human system from ground level, okay? Now, the second thing you need to know, and this is where, it will become hugely important for you, okay? Because I think many of you have already figured out, for example, the targeting program and where really the profit margins are, and weapons testing and, developing biomedical devices and remote neural monitoring and all that stuff and controlling populations and enslaving them and, whatever, raping them by remote control, that sort of stuff. Hugely profitable. But you can play the same game with currencies, with banks, with economies, with NATO, and all these other organizations, and it really works. And when you have understood the fundamental laws of physics of any complex system, you can not just catch up with somebody who has been in the game for decades, you can outperform him. In other words, you will become more senior to them than they are. And that's just because you really thought about it, you understand the system, and the system will fall under the laws of physics. So that any system follows the laws of systems physics. It is physically impossible not to follow those laws, right? If it comes different, you have messed up your calculations and you haven't taken into account a particular thing, okay? But otherwise, any system anywhere on planet Earth and in the universe follows the laws of physics for that system. It's just that simple. So when you figured out the laws of physics, you can outperform the most senior person who maybe hasn't quite figured it out to that, fine detail as you have. Okay, and that is the big secret. And it really worked. And one of the ways I kind of proved to myself that it really worked is when I was trying to launch 2 companies after I left academia, and they were destroyed by targeting. But I really mean destroyed, okay? Burnt into the ground pretty much. And then I thought, oh shit, I really need to get some money. So I thought, okay, how can I get some money? I'll just go and work in finance. But I really hate the criminality in finance. So I found a little boutique company that I really liked because they seemed clean, okay? They seemed like they were doing good stuff. But then how the hell do you get a job in finance if all your life was in particle physics and you know, frankly, shit all about finance, okay? So I thought, right, well, it can't be that hard because it's just a physical system. Okay, so I mean, how hard can it be, right? Like fluid dynamics and a bit of this and that and so on, you know. And then I thought, okay, let's put this to the test. I have to kind of map a big system and come up with a conclusion that would impress my future boss and would think, okay, let's get that girl, even though she knows fuck all about finance, right? Because there's something she has understood that's really valuable to the company. So what I did back then is actually map the financial system and currencies as best as I could, just using, you know, my favorite search engine, and just find out anything that I could in a couple of weeks. And then I used that using the laws of physics, and I predicted down to the day the biggest money printing program in the European central banks and the Euro's history, right? And that's how I landed that job. How did I do it? By just understanding the laws of physics, okay? Right? And hoping that I haven't missed any higher order terms in the first, you know, those weeks I had time to actually look into this. But it really works. And when you do that, you have really understood the system. And once you've understood the system, that system probably will last for decades or maybe centuries. You have understood it for life, and no one can take that away from you. right? So you have reached a higher level of understanding, and after that, once you're up there, you can never fall back down, at least not on that topic, okay? There might be other physical effects you haven't taken into account. But this is just how powerful this effect is, or this, skill is to map a system. And this is why you should teach your children to learn physics, okay? And maths as well. If your children asks you, if your child or asks you why he should be doing his maths homework, even though it's, dry as sawdust and so boring, it is because maths and physics are the superpowers you need to crack any system ever. You just need maths and physics, and maybe a bit of chemistry and biology if you really want to go that direction, but that's again ultimately also again maths and physics. Okay, so these are the tools. And if you don't know maths and physics, those people who do, who are evil, will enslave you and eat your brain, right? Which is what they're doing right now. So we need to smarten up on the maths and physics and understand the system and get ahead of them. Okay, so that's what we need to do. So number one, all of you independently, you need to start thinking, how does the CEO of this targeting shit show think? And how can we increase the risks and liabilities to all these bastards, right? As quickly as possible. What are true risks and liabilities? What causes permanent and irreparable damage to them? And how can we achieve that sort of damage? By the way, that's what they're doing to us when they're shooting us in the head with directed energy weapons. They think, how the hell can we damage these people's brains enough so that they will eventually end up debilitated, but not fast enough that anybody can track it back to us. This is what it is, okay? So when they're shooting at you with directed energy weapons, it's because they want you to die, but they don't want to get caught. So they want you to die somewhere else away from them, okay? That's the plan, okay? So now when you have gone up to the CEO level, okay, and you've understood this and you're thinking, okay, how can I increase the risk and liabilities? And you have figured it out and you found a way, okay, the next step is to go back down onto the factory floor level, if you like, and start turning every cog of the machine your way to increase risks and, liabilities to the management level. Okay, you basically are trying to bankrupt that company. That's basically what we're trying to do, right? The money is the lifeline of this company, of this entire shit show, because none of those guys do anything, right? Just for song and a dance, right? They are so corrupt that they will not be the self-sacrificing heroes on that side. And this is ultimately our superpower, because if you are on the good side, and if you are truly, truly resonating with other people and you like to help them, you have altruism, you have empathy, and you are so good you can go the extra mile just to help somebody else, just because you can, that's when you're on our side. You have this superpower that makes you essentially weightless. The other side is worn down by the fact that they hate each other. They're a bunch of corrupt bastards who either want to kill